Welcome to the Wayne Public Library's virtual author chat. My guest today is D.V. Stone. D.V. Stone is an award-winning author and speaker known for crafting stories filled with heart, hope, and a touch of the extraordinary. Writing across middle-grade paranormal mysteries, fantasy, and romance, she blends emotional depth with imaginative adventure. Drawing on her background in human and animal medical fields, she brings empathy and authenticity to every character. Based in northern New Jersey, she finds inspiration in travel, nature, and seasonal traditions. Through her popular blog and community outreach, she champions creativity and connection, inviting readers and writers alike to celebrate the power of story. Welcome, Devi. Please tell us a little more about yourself and your novel, Red Gate Farm.
Hi. So I'm so happy to be here with you today. As you can see, I'm kind of outside in my world here. Up in People think of New Jersey and they think often of the cities and stuff. And we live here where there's bear and fox and deer and all kinds of stuff will be traipsing through the yard. We enjoy it. We live near the High Point Monument, not far from there. So that's kind of who I am. I'm very much outdoors, sitting on my deck now. We have a fire pit out in the yard, and often you can find me around a fire pit, just talking with people, enjoying friends, and and sharing stories, and sometimes tears. So that's yeah. That's me.
And Red Gate Farm, that's your newest book. What
Mhm.
can you tell us? Can you tell us a little bit about it? Anything that's not in the blurb? Can you share anything?
Okay, so Redgate Farm. Prior to releasing Redgate Farm, I wrote another story that's in. I have This is the fourth Lake Unami story, uh, and each one of them they're standalone, but they're interconnected. And what kind of happened with that is, I was looking for I needed a palate cleanser. I've been working on a couple of books for a while, and you get kind of in that middle place, and you're like, I don't know what to do. So I had thought to write a story about. I have mid-grade mysteries, and there's a monastery that's not far from here. It's a Catholic monastery, and it's been abandoned for a very long time. And I'm like, oh, that'd be a great ghost story. And then the more I looked at it, I was like, you know what, I don't want to take something that's sacred here. It's a Catholic monastery, and I don't want to turn it into a ghost story. But um, as I was doing research on the place and the property, I found out it was originally, back in the 1800s, called Redgate Farm, and it was a working farm. It was owned by a newspaper um, man from the town of Newton, which it's near, and he had other properties and stuff in the area, and he was also a postmaster for a while. So I'm like, you know what? Let's kind of go with that. And the other thing that happens often in New Jersey, around the country, is eminent domain, where people are having and I know people who have had property that's been taken from them. So I kind of did a story about a disillusioned journalist and returning home to friends and family, and a rancher who is losing her home to eminent domain, and it kind of came together. Um, so it takes place in in Unami, and one of the things that I really love is that one of so for a Christmas Storm, which is the one that just precedes this one, um, a reviewer said that a lot of times my scenes, they kind of take on as a character. The Like the storm in A Christmas Storm became a character in the book. The farm has its own character. Uh, there's a little bit of, I think, guardian angel kind of stuff in it. So it brings a little bit of magic into Lake Unami in all of the books in the series. So it's probably one of my favorite books that I've written so far. Get misty.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing a little bit of the backstory of how and why you wrote Red Gate Farm. You mentioned Lake Unami. Um, First, I'm going to ask, is it a real place?
It is not. It is
It is
real in
not.
my imagination.
Okay. Did you base it on a lake that you're fond of, that you visit, or just, imagination?
Well, I have a lovely lake in out right out here. Um, and I also live not far from Lake Mohawk, which is in Sparta. And so it's kind of a conglomeration of those two. When I was looking for the original story that I wrote in Lake Unami was called Rainbow Sprinkles. And I have a picture in my living room, and it's a watercolor scene of a boardwalk and sailboats, and it just sparked my imagination. So people often ask, "Well, where do you get an idea from?" It can come from anywhere. It comes from a painting that's in my living room. So I just created Lake Unami as a special place that where miracles happen, and friendship and small community, small town kind of things. Because I live right near a small town. So it's things that I'm familiar with and things that I love, the community of it.
Okay. You did mention that there are four books set in Lake Unami.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how are they interconnected, and what are the titles?
So the first book, that I wrote, was Rainbow Sprinkles. Um, these two, Rainbow Sprinkles and Red Gate Farm, are independent. I have two that are with my publishing house, which is the Wild Rose Press, and that is Sophia's Magic Beans and A Christmas Storm. So they there's a character that goes through the books, and his name is Albert. And Albert, he I don't want to misquote Albert, so give me a chance to pull Albert's quote up here. Um, he, Albert says of himself, "I do community relations, specializing in intervention and problem solving when called on." So
So,
he kind of floats through the books um, in his little magical way and just makes a difference in people's lives. But the people from Gloriana in Rainbow Sprinkles up to Addie in Redgate Farm, they're all part of the town. They're all part of the greater community, and learn that and they just learn that the support that's available through friends and family and small town living. So whether now A Christmas Storm, while it doesn't take actual place in Lake Unami, all the characters meet together at a house for Christmas, and they kind of get trapped there, and it's kind of gives a nod to Dickens' The Ghosts of Christmas Past, Present, and Future, as the character who is in Rainbow Sprinkles comes to grips with her life and what she's wanted. So they all have little mystical things in them, and they all have the basis in Lake Unami.
okay. Thank you for telling us about the four books that are set in Lake Nami. In case anybody out there is interested, I know we have at least two. I did buy Rainbow Sprinkles. I kind of remember, because this is our second interview, that you told me in our first interview that I should read Rainbow Sprinkles. Just because of a little bit of my history. Can you tell us a little bit about Rainbow Sprinkles, like the characters?
Sure. Um, So my publishing house, the Wild Rose Press, had put out a call. They were doing it was called a One Scoop or Two series, and they were looking for books, novellas become part of that series that surrounds ice cream, and that's where I started with the Lake Unami series. So Gloriana Jones was a widow, and she and her husband had dreamed of having an ice cream shop and bringing joy one ice cream cone at a time to the small community. Unfortunately, he passed away. And it's a story of second chances and finding love later in life. Not they're not old, but they're in the middle. So she met Nathan James. she's Gloriana Jones, he's Nathan James. I just get tickled by naming them like that. Um, and learning to love again, and learning to accept yourself for who you are. There's a scene where Gloriana is getting ready for her first date with Nathan, and all the things that people would have, especially later in life, of body issues and thought issues, and talking to her deceased husband, through a picture, and then seeing rainbows. Rainbows make a big rainbows are symbolic through all the books, as a sign of hope and a sign of promise and future. So it just she and happily ever after, because they're romance books, and the road that takes them to get there, and Nathan's daughter is in A Christmas Storm, and Sophia's Magic Beans is Calliope owns a candy shop in Lake Unami. And they all kind of, it's just kind of a business area thing. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Um, so in terms of writing, I know you mentioned before we started, you mentioned that you often sit where you're sitting now, and it's one of the locations that you'll sit to do your writing. Do you have a writing routine? Do you ever, like, plot out, like, um, I'm gonna work on this today, or do you just sit down and start typing? Yeah.
Um, I've I've come to a place. I've been doing my first book published in 2016, and I have 14 books right now that are published. And um, for a little while, writing started to become a job more than a joy. And I was bringing my former life as a employee and a worker, and sit down, do this, do this, do this. You have to, all these tasks needed to be accomplished. And it was taking away from my life. I would spend 8 hours a day, behind the desk, either writing or researching or social media, which is a huge time suck. So in the past year, there's days that I'll write a chapter. There's days that I'll write a page. There's days where I'm like, I'm going to take a day off. So my husband and I, we just celebrated our 32nd anniversary, and he is very adamant that one day a week is date day, and we just go and we like to do like things like thrifting. We like to visit. We like visiting historical and architectural places. Um, so we do that. So my writing can vary. Usually, I do my work in work in the mornings, because by the late afternoon to evening I'm starting to get burned out, from being on a computer and stuff. But right now I'm working on, it's called Honky Tonk House, and that's part of my Impact series. And there's a lot of research that has to go into that, because it's a romance, it's a suspense, but it's also leaning into police procedural kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that have to, um, get researched and stuff. And then I enjoy research. So, but I have to I had to teach myself, and it's a continuing thing, that there's times where you just need to be a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a friend, and you need to step away from the computer for a while.
So one of my favorite questions to ask authors, if you could tell us a little bit more, if you could tell us a little bit about a memorable reader encounter. Have you had any ones that you want to share with us today?
So I do. I actually have this book here. It's called Bell Creek Farm, and it's written by uh, Juliana Hippie. And Juliana is a young lady that I met at one of my book signings, and we just started talking. And she always wanted to be an author. So at 9 years old, she wrote this book. It's a picture book for kids. It is available for sale. Uh, but she asked me to, we kind of developed a relationship from there, and she would send her ideas and she would send questions and stuff to me. So I kind of mentored her. And I have a dedication in the book to me. So I was just, it's to make a difference in a young person's life who I believe she's writing another book, but she's gotten a little older, so the attention spans can go different ways. But she's that's her thing. She wants to be an author, and I get to be part of her journey. As started as a reader. We were just at a book signing, and her and her family came over, and we just kind of clicked. So
That's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it. And good luck to her with her future. Starting so young, can hope that all of her ideas are exploding and she'll come up with many, many more
yeah.
um, books down the road. Um, so I like to ask romance writers this question mostly because um, it's a sticking point. It's been a sticking point as long as I've been a romance reader and engaged with romance authors. There is still this stigma or um, a misunderstanding of with regard to the romance genre. Why do you think that is?
I I was I was actually at a book signing, and there was a multi-author, and one of the authors there, she shall remain nameless, who was there to sign and promote her romance book, said these were her dumb books. And that's coming from an author. There's nothing dumb about them. The romance, well, first of all, there's romance in almost every book I read. Even when you look at things like mysteries and stuff, usually there's some kind of connection, because life is about relationships and it's about love, and romance is a huge part of that. And now the strict straight up romance, it has to meet certain parameters. There's rules. It has to have a happily ever after or a happily for now. Um, but if a book doesn't have romance in it, honestly, it's not something that I'm probably going to read, because I'm a relational writer and I like relational books. I like seeing how people come together and fall in love. And um, but but they'll say, you just look at the romance genre. It deals with family, it deals with tragedy, it deals with love, it deals with overcoming, it deals with so many things that go on in our life. Now, I'm also a fantasy author. I love fantasy because fantasy, it takes me I read a lot of fantasy. It takes me out of my world, which can sometimes be just crazy, and it puts me into this entire different space. With romance, when I read it and when I write it and we get to that happily ever after, I love closure. And it's a closing, and it's the way that we want it to be. You know, people will say, "Oh, I don't believe in forever after." 32 years, I'm still in love with my husband. We're still enjoying each other's company, and we talk about having a 50-year contract, and we're going to go into renegotiation soon. But but love is so important in the world, whether it's the love of friends and family, found family, um, uh, partners. If there's no love, then I really don't find myself being part of that world.
I do. I've always, I'm always shocked, and I agree with you. There's love in everything. There's romance in everything. Doesn't matter the genre for the most part. I've always found it in the variety of books. You're either rooting for two people who seem to have a connection on the page to get together, or they do. Like it just happens. It might be just a subplot that doesn't even get fully explored by the author, but it's there. So
Even in my kids' books, I have my kids' mystery books, the Agent Carter series, and in those, they're the names have been changed to protect the innocent people in my life. But there's a little bit of romance between Uncle Martin and Dee, the waitress at the diner. And it's just fun, and it's very simple, it's very clean, and it's very appropriate to, but it's good for kids to know that relationships are a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. It's disheartening to hear that an author who is actually writing in the genre would say something so negative about it. Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, there was a group of us kind of standing around, and everybody's jaw just kind of flopped open, and then we were like, "Who had work? Nobody had words." It was just,
And there's so much success right now with which I always say they don't make the connection, or if they do, they try not to, they kind of ignore it. There's success like the last couple of weeks. It's been the Off Campus series on Prime, or Heated Rivalries on HBO, or Bridgerton on like. Or even the Virgin River, which is Robin Carr. Those are all romance authors
Mhm.
that are writing these. They're pulling these books off of shelves. They're making the screenplay, and that author and those that series of books is going to get a lot of people reading it.
Yeah.
So to not recognize that that's what you're watching, and then
Mhm.
walk into a bookstore or a library or somewhere and be like, oh, I don't read that. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay.
I think a lot of people go back, to dating myself, but you go back to the 70s and you had the Bodice Busters and you had the Harlequin books, which were all kind of program and stuff. So it was the same story, different names. I deal with that a little bit in the same with Hallmark. The Hallmark stories are romance. They're kind of cookie cutter, but you know what? There's comfort in that. There's comfort in knowing I'm going to pick up a book, and my life really stinks today, but I'm going to pick up this Hallmark book, and by the time I get to the end of it and I go through the Christmas tree trauma and the burnt food on the stove, I'm going to get to the end, and you know what? They're in love, and I feel better about myself. It's
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. But I do like to talk to authors, to romance authors about that, because it's frustrating. So I like to commiserate kind of, but I would like to find an answer to like remind people that there's romance everywhere, and they probably watch it on TV or in movies, and they
and
love
they
it.
read it in other books. They're reading it in mysteries. They're reading it in suspense. They're reading it in my husband's a Clive Cussler fan, so he reads. But there's always a little something going on somewhere in the books. Um,
Of course.
Wherever. So it's a guy's book, but you know what, guys, you're reading romance too. You're just calling it something different. So
Absolutely. So, of all of your characters, is there one in particular that you would like to have dinner with if you could, if they were a real person? Who
well,
would it?
I really, I mentioned Albert earlier, and I'd like to sit down with him. He, he's kind of like that guardian angel kind of thing, not guardian angel. He's a community services guy. Um, but he sees into everybody's life, and you wonder why, how, and how can I be the Albert in other people's lives? So, which, if we live in community, we become the Albert in other people's lives, and the best way to do that, which is not pushy and not offensive in any way, but he guides people along. He leads them. He asks the questions, and he leads them to the place where they need to be. And he comforts them, and I think that's a good role model for me and other people. He's the one that choose kindness, and that's what he does. He chooses kindness, but he also chooses honesty as he's dealing with it. And but he does it in a loving way. So whether it's the male characters, the female characters, or whether he's sitting there holding a goat in Redgate Farm, it's who he is. So
Okay. And do you do anything special when you finish writing a book, or when you've published your book comes out? Doesn't have to be when you hit the end, because I know there's a lot of extra steps after that. But when you actually have the book in hand, and it's there to go out to the world, do
yeah,
you do anything?
we're big. well, first I call the people that are important in my life. I'm like, and the book is out, the book's available, it's ready, it's in the world. I gave birth to my baby, but I just like sitting around a campfire, maybe with a glass of champagne or a glass of wine, and we talk about, talk with my husband or my sister, and we'll be talking about the book and what's next, because there's always a what's next. So there's no. I think when my first book came out, we went out with a bunch of friends and we had a big celebration. But you know what? 14 books later, it's still exciting, and opening the box up and taking out the book and doing a YouTube video of the unboxing and stuff. There's still a thrill that never gets old. But it's like, another job done. Let's move on to the next one. So
Okay. Um, those are my questions for you today. We I think we had a lovely discussion. If I were to ask one last one, it would be: is there anything you ever want to talk about during this, like an author chat or an author interview, that you never get a chance to? Is there a topic or something that of interest to you that you might want to share with us?
I have so many topics. I talk about everything. um, I love uh, I love finding inspiration in the world around me. Whether it's we travel a lot. We have our camper, and I remember being down. We were down in Florida over the winter. We were working a job down there as in recreation. Um, but that gave us a lot of time off, and we were able to hang out with friends and go to the beach and stuff. And there, I'm walking along the beach, and there were these trees, and the trees are just like gnarled, and one of them reminded me of the movie Beetlejuice, the way it was, and I'm like, that's going to be in a book. So to look for inspiration in people, and to look for inspiration in um in art, like my picture, in conversations, and books don't have to be your not everybody's meant to be a writer. I'm meant to be a writer, it's what I do. But art, it's art. A Writing a book is art. Painting a picture is art. Writing a song is art. People who don't like to read, well, you just haven't found the book that you want to read. Do you like graphic novels? Well, yeah, I do. Well, it's reading. Do you want to sit and listen to you don't want to sit and still and read a book? I listen to books on tape. um when I'm driving places, when we go on trips, I always have an earbud in and listen and stuff. So there's if you don't read, I think you're closing yourself off to so much of the world that people ask me, well, how do you know that? Like, because I read books. I know about things, and I know, not because I'm super smart, but because somebody else was smart and they put it in a book and it stuck with me. um, and with books, you can go on mini vacations, you can explore the world, you can learn so many different things, and you can learn about relationships, whether it's romance or whether it's just work relationships or friend relationships. There's so much to be had. It's such a rich world that I think people do themselves a disservice by saying, well, I don't like to read. Well, you don't like to read that, but here, story, just real quick story. My brother, he's 5 years younger than me, and we're going back a bunch of years ago. He's like, I don't like to read. I don't like to read. It's boring. And but he didn't find the thing. I gave him my copy of The Hobbit, because he was old enough to. Hobbit was written for children. It's a very deep book for a child. But I gave him that book, and since then he's been a reader. It was finding that one thing. And like I said, it could be a graphic novel, it could be poetry, it could be a song. All of those things are reading. It could be listening, and people should put down your phone, put down the games, um, and find something that a world that you want to be part of. So That's all I got to say about that, as far as Gump would say.
Well, thank you so much, DV Donna. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about Redgate Farm and about your writing and publishing. Really enjoyed talking to you. And it's such a beautiful day. I hope you get to sit out there and enjoy it a little longer. But
We're going to this afternoon. We're going down to Habitat for Humanity has the restores, and we're looking for a counter for our upstairs bathroom, which is circa 1970 something. And we've already sourced a sink, and now we just need to source the counter for the sink to go in. So that's what I'll be doing this afternoon. And you know what? I love it. I love finding treasures.
oh, excellent. Well, thank you again. I, of course, will be in touch, but thank you.